know.
Welcome, everybody, to the Beards and Bible Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm joined by my buddy Gabe. Here on our lunch break today. Gabe, how you doing, man?
Good. You hit that record button kind of quick.
I was trying to catch you off guard. We were making
Oh.
I was making fun of your hat, and then I called you a name, and then I hit record. So.
Y'all see this emotional abuse I have to work with here?
I was trying to get a more natural response from you so you wouldn't be self-conscious because we're recording. Not to say they were ever self-conscious. Sometimes I forget the microphone's even on, but, you know.
Yeah, you were saying I look very Alabama today?
I was just emotionally abusing you right before we hit record.
Yeah. Man, it is annoyingly hot outside today. It's like 95 degrees.
Man.
And I was just working outside. Yeah, I was pointing out my sweat rings on my hat here.
My goodness.
But I've got it easy compared to some, for sure.
Are you up on a roof this week?
No. I'm never up on a roof.
Okay.
You'll never find me on a roof. I'm just looking at the people on the roof. Yeah.
You're not like in the attic either, because that's what you were doing last time we recorded. You had like an HVAC crisis situation going on.
I'm more frequently in attics than I am on roofs, yeah. So I'm just all over the place with the exception of the roof. I don't ever go on a roof.
Yeah. Is that because you're afraid of heights, or is that just because you're a weenie?
Yeah, it's a combination. It's a combination of the two.
I didn't give you really another option that's more flattering. It's just accusing you of both.
Yeah, I was looking at the roofers that are roofing one of my houses today, and I'm like, dude, how are they doing? I mean, they just have they're dangling from ropes, and like they got a super steep pitch roof, and it's super hot outside. I'm like, that is a special form of athleticism that they're exerting there. It's like,
yeah. And
then you just see the back of their van just full of like Modelo bottles and stuff, like empty Modelo bottle cans, and just like, wow, okay, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I think I'm too big of a weenie, and I'm too afraid of heights to spend extended amounts of time on the roof.
Yeah.
And as a pastor in a rural area, I've also been the first one that gets called when someone falls off a roof. And so I've been to a couple of hospital visits from folks who have fallen off roofs. So
we need you to get down here. Timmy fell off the roof again.
He did it again.
Drop what you're doing and get down here.
He keeps getting up on that roof. Did you hear this news story? This news story from this dude in Maine? This is true. You should probably Google this when I'm telling you about it so we can verify it. Okay. There's a news story that came out of a guy in Bangor, Maine, who was just a random passerby who hid crack cocaine in the chimney of somebody's roof and then was up on the roof and refused to get down from the roof. Did you hear about this?
No.
And so the local fire department was called to get the guy off the roof, and they had a bucket. They had a bucket that they were going to, raise up to the dude as he was up on the roof. And in the bucket, I guess they had some of their firefighting equipment in there, and one was an axe.
Wow. And
so instead of him getting in the bucket and being lowered down from the roof, he grabbed the axe and started just like chopping holes in this random roof.
Wow.
Yeah.
This guy, okay, yeah, I did find out.
Did you find the story? Name. Okay.
39-year-old Stephen Nason. This happened in Maine?
Yeah, that's what I heard it on the radio the other day.
Yeah, Bangor, Maine. Wow.
Yeah.
Are we sure this guy's not from Florida?
I was about to say, this is a very Florida man type story. Okay, so he's 39 years old.
We'll have to do some public. I love that you're Googling Stephen Nason, Florida, 39 years old right now, and looking at public records to see, because we're just in disbelief this guy's actually from Maine.
Yeah, Maine, I always think of like, really, really quiet, gentle folks living in Maine.
Yeah.
How do you spell his name?
Chowder.
Eating some chowder.
Nason?
Okay, here it is. Bangor man arrested after 7-hour standoff on 14th Street. Bangor police arrested Stephen Nason Wednesday after 7-hour standoff on the 14th Street rooftop. He climbed onto the roof at 4 a.m., refused to come down until 11:30. He's charged with aggravated criminal mischief But this news story didn't tell us all that happened. But apparently, he went to town on some people's roof with an axe.
Yeah, there's a picture of him sitting on the very top of the chimney with his shirt off. His shirt is wrapped around his face. Dude, I'm telling you, this guy, if he isn't from Florida, I would.
See, I feel like that happens probably every day in Florida. That's probably not.
I would bet you he's going to relocate to Florida within the next decade.
He might get a scholarship to a Florida university. They're like, welcome home.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you do if you woke up in the middle of the night, or I guess 4 a.m., early morning, and there's some dude on your roof who refuses to come down?
Yeah, I would just, man, in Alabama, I'm sure every homeowner would check their homeowner policy to see if like gunshot holes through a roof are covered under that policy or not. Yeah. That would be a fatal decision, I think. And for those who don't know why I'm making fun of Florida people, I am a Florida person. I'm just in exile. I'm in exile to Alabama right now. So I am a Florida man, I'm like a double whammy Florida man living in Alabama. So
Gabe was the original Florida man. Gabe was the guy in college when there was a hurricane and we were all terrified of the hurricane. I got a wrap on my window and I look out as a 18-year-old terrified of this giant hurricane, and there's Gabe out there going, "Come on, boys, let's go run!" And so, being as intelligent as I was at 18 years old, I followed Gabe into the hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds into the gale force winds of the hurricane, and you proved to me that there is no hurricane gale force winds that Florida man is ever afraid of. So,
speaking of winds. Seems like something is like a wind is sweeping across the United Kingdom.
Ooh. What a great transition. Your Assembly of God is showing.
It's quietly sweeping across the UK.
Yeah. Yes, this is what we're going to.
Have you heard about that?
I have heard about that. It's amazing that you've also heard about that. It's almost like we've been texting each other about it recently.
Yeah.
So what we're going to talk about today, the so-called Quiet Revival Gospel Coalition put out an article. Bible Society in the UK also has an article about it. I heard about it from the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast. He mentioned it as a stat that for years the narrative has been that Christianity is on the decline in the US and the UK. Some people have even said that Christianity would be extinct in the UK by 2067, which is crazy to even say out loud. But a very surprising trend that has a lot of analysts and sociologists scratching their heads and going, wow, we didn't see this coming, is that actually there is a uptick in engagement in church amongst the younger generation. Which is crazy because for years people have written off the youngest generation. This is Gen Z, and just said Gen Z, just all they're crazy about is just their phones and, TikTok and watching reels and, they're whatever. And actually, Gen Z is outperforming the other generations in terms of religious engagement, which is crazy. So, Gabe, when I first sent this to you and you started looking into this, is this surprising to you, or what was your thoughts?
Yeah, it is. It is surprising. Yeah. I immediately thought, like, what would cause that? And then my mind went to, we said we've had revival themed podcast topics in the past, or podcast episodes in the past. It's like, what? Yeah, is there a long-term lasting effect on the culture because of this? And I think that's what really that's what really is the trademark of a true revival, I think. Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's called the Quiet Revival because it's not really, we've talked about the Brownsville Revival, we've talked about the First Great Awakening, Second Great Awakening, and most of those were centered around meetings. and a lot of religious fervor that was centered around evangelistic meetings or, religious worship services. This is not that. This is simply that in the UK, church attendance is up 50% since 2018. So in 2018, only 3.7 million people in the UK were attending church. Now that number is up to 5.8 million people. And among 18 to 24-year-olds, it has quadrupled, which is astounding. So it went from 4% in 2018 to 16% today. Among young men, it's even done more than quadrupled. It's gone from 4% to 21%. So that's young men ages 18 to 24. It's 12% for young women of that same age and demographic. But that's still notable. That's still very significant, from 4% to 12% for young women. 40% of Gen Z prays monthly. 35% say they believe in God or a higher power, which that seems small to us, but I mean, the UK, atheism and agnosticism was one of the fastest growing religious trends in the past 2 decades. So it's pretty amazing that that's, it's a reversal, it seems. So kind of examining the data, the rise is especially strong in Pentecostal churches and in the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. I heard this recently when I think we were talking about this when we talked about the new Pope. The Roman Catholic Church has baptized more new members in the past 4 or 5 years than they have in decades.
Wow.
That's super interesting. Yeah, and most of those new members that are first generation Roman Catholic conversions are young men, which I find to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Yeah. And so part of this growth is driven by immigration. So you have a lot of folks from African countries, from Middle Eastern countries that have come in, and perhaps they're, especially in Africa, there's a lot of African Christians who are coming to the UK. So part of that growth is driven by immigration, but it's not entirely explained by it. So that's some of it, but that's not all of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it just kind of seems like post-COVID, there is this desire, there is this hunger, there is this search among young men for meaning, for substance, for young men to give their lives to something that matters. And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of what this is. And I guess the question we need to ask is, what does revival mean when it's not loud, when it's a quiet revival, it's steady, it's local? Gabe, what are your thoughts about why young men kind of post-COVID would be searching out Christianity as perhaps the answer? And why specifically young men, not young ladies? I mean, young ladies, some of it, but particularly young men.
Man, that's really interesting. I wonder how much influence pundits and commentators, like you've got, Jordan Peterson, even Joe Rogan, who are...
By the way, Joe Rogan's saying that he's attending church now, by the way.
Yeah, interesting. Douglas Murray. You've got these some of them even I would say conservative commentators. I think they've really encouraged young men, especially, to take a fresh look at the Bible, and make them kind of prompt them to ask the question: is this something that is true? Is this something that is relevant? And I think that maybe we're beginning to see the fruits of that. But I'm not certain. I can't prove that, obviously, but I do that. Those people have had profound influence for sure.
Yeah, I have a couple ideas as to why I think it's young men. I think probably the past 2 decades we've seen essentially young men represented, for better or for worse, through guys like Logan Paul and Jake Paul, and like this is what it means to be a success as a young man. That the good life is found through, money, parties, status, freedom, pleasure, freedom from responsibility. And I think so many of them have gotten sucked into that world, feeling ultimately just like anxious, lost, numb, and the dopamine addiction that our culture just has and that young men are offered as like the solution to this is what life is about. I don't think that's delivering on its promises. I think that the hedonistic culture that young men are being promised is just proven to be absolutely bankrupt.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing like these movements even online there was a movement somebody's telling me about called the NoFap movement. Have you heard about that?
No.
So basically Gen Z's reaction to overconsumption of porn led them to say like, hey, we have more access to porn than any other generation ever before. It's on our phones. It's everywhere we go, but it's awful for us. Like it's not bringing us joy. And so these young guys are going, we're going to start a movement called NoFap. So basically, if you're listening with your kids, you can mute for the next few seconds. Basically, NoFap is don't masturbate, don't watch porn. And these are not Christian young men. These are just young men going, porn, social media, video games, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, smoking weed. Like, we have access to it like never before, but the deeper you go down into that, the more you're finding out it does not bring joy. It makes you miserable, and you get really burnt out. And so I think just like hedonistic culture is more accessible to the younger generation than ever before. But when young men kind of go into it as deep as they're going, they get to a point where they just go, man, it doesn't satisfy. And so I think part of the reason they're going, I wonder if there's something to the Christian faith is because they're just looking around and going, man, if this is what the world says are answers, then it's not delivering. Do you feel like our generation had that epiphany, or do you think our generation just kind of kept going?
No, I think our generation was kind of coming into age when all that was becoming extremely accessible, and we were kind of riding the wave of all of that new exciting technology and access. Aren't we kind of like the generation of like Monster drinks and Red Bulls and
so you're talking about the millennials,
and,
your generation, my generation.
Yeah. And I think now I do think though that possibly I'd have to look at the age groups of these people, and I'm sure maybe it's in there, but our generation, now that we're turning 40, I think I wonder if we're kind of leading the charge back to faith. Back to substance, or if we're just kind of like okay because we didn't have this like overindulgence. But I don't know. Every region is different culturally speaking in the United States alone, let alone globally.
Yeah, I'm
speaking.
not sure. I'm not sure the stats on millennials, but I do think by and large millennials, we did not have as much access to unrestrained hedonism like the Gen Z generation did. So perhaps we never we haven't collectively as a generation come to the end of it and seen that it's just empty and said to ourselves, there's nothing here, right? I wonder if we keep thinking there is going to be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but that's what keeps us chasing it down. It's just taking different forms now that we're older.
And us millennials were our generation was kind of split between, the first half of our childhood was pre-internet, and the second half was post-internet. So I think our prefrontal cortex is formed without a screen in front of our eyes all the time. And now we're seeing Gen Z, which had that during the formation of their childhood and everything. I think they were more prone. So like I I can go days without my phone and be okay with that, but a lot of Gen Z would really struggle with the notion of doing that because that it's so much more kind of where I most of my childhood I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 18, 19 years old. So like that was the norm to me. So yeah, I think you're right that maybe Gen Z is just, they were just completely immersed their entire lives in all this fictitious stuff, I guess.
I think another contributing factor is the shaming of men by society. And I think young men have felt, for better or for worse, I'm not accusing any one particular group of making young men feel this way, but I think young men have just felt like everything about them by default is toxic. They hear these conflicting messages, be a strong leader, but don't be too strong, right? Don't be so strong that you're not giving women a place, or lead, but don't be dominant. You can't be a dominant leader, or provide, but don't be ambitious. It's okay if your wife makes more than you, but make sure you're not falling into these antiquated, misogynistic whatever. And so I think young men coming into adulthood have felt just very confused, very ashamed, very silenced, very anxious. Who am I supposed to be? And, we can say what we want about misogyny and how toxic misogyny is, and I would 100% say, yes, you're right, there is such a thing as toxic masculinity. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that young men are lonelier, they're more depressed, they're more anxious, and they are statistically the highest demographic to die by suicide than ever before.
Wow.
And they're falling behind. Like they're basically told, I think in a social Marxist construct, that they're the reason for the problems in the world. And that, I mean, I don't understand why we don't think that that's going to cause young men to feel horrible about themselves and think that they don't have any value or worth, right?
Yeah.
So Christianity teaches that men have value, just as women have value, right? That men are made in the image and likeness of God, and they have a purpose, and they're called by God to be the spiritual leaders of their homes. And that's not to say that they are to dominate and press women down. It's just to say that they are to step into a kind of loving, sacrificial leadership. And that is a very, 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 very appealing message to young men who have basically been told that manhood is something to be ashamed of. They're given these like portrayals of manhood through the examples of Jesus and David and Paul. And that's appealing. That's like, man, you're calling me up to be something more than what I am. Do you see that in your sons? Do you see that in young men that you have encountered just in church?
Yeah. You see this kind of struggle between biblical masculinity and what the world is trying to define masculinity, and what it's saying you should be like. Yeah, you see that, and that's a constant, I would say, tension that a man in Western civilization needs to kind of navigate through. Is how do I be masculine as a man, but also, I guess sensitive, for lack of a better word, or godly,
emotionally available.
Yeah, and I think our culture tends to say you have to be all of one or nothing. It's like you can't be a good balance of those things.
You mentioned Jordan Peterson. Do you think that Jordan Peterson has kind of been, for some guys, the gateway into the Christian worldview?
I haven't personally met anybody who has that experience, but I could see that happening. My only caution and concern would be that Jordan Peterson is not drawing people to the gospel.
Yeah, agreed.
because of this idea of sinfulness and the breaking of God's law and their need for salvation, but rather he's drawing people to the message of the Bible out of saying basically you need purpose, you need identity,
you need responsibility in order.
You need responsibility. Yeah. This is what a good citizen might do in a society. At least those are the talks that I've heard Jordan Peterson share. Is there isn't like this language of like depravity, moral depravity, and the gospel is what will cure that.
Yeah, so, I agree with you. I don't think that. I mean, obviously, he's not explicitly Christian, and he's straight up said he's not, a Christian in the traditional sense of it. And if you listen to his message, it is very much
right.
Everything is allegorized. If you read 12 Rules for Life, or you listen to his talks from the We Who Wrestle with God tour, it's very much like, the language of sacrifice in the Bible gives us an important construct to live our lives by. And while I think some of those things are very compelling and they may even be true, it's an incomplete gospel, but I think it's a gateway for young men especially, and young women too, but really anybody that is so kind of burnt out with the emptiness of moral relativism, that right and wrong are subjective in the culture, and people just go, man, okay, so what does honor mean? What does integrity mean? What does justice mean? If we're saying that justice is simply whatever you say it is, or justice is just toppling the hegemonic structures that are in control. So if you're a cis white man, then justice would be removing you from power. And someone steps back and goes, well, why? Why is that true? And so there's this hunger for what is truth. I need a system of meaning that holds everything together. And I think, these voices out there are kind of just saying, hey, here's the door into where that meaning is. And it's found in kind of the language, at least, of the Bible. Hopefully something deeper than that, not just the language of the Bible.
Yeah. I think Jordan Peterson approaches it from a very intellectual standpoint, a very philosophical standpoint, and not from a standpoint of desperation for any kind of saving or anything like that. If you watch, there's one really awkward clip. You could probably find just that clip on YouTube if you wanted to search for it and find it. There's one clip of him on the YouTube channel Jubilee where it's like him versus, I think it's like 25 atheists. And one of the atheists comes up and says, like, basically, as a Christian, you believe this. And he goes, well, I'm not a Christian. And the title of the YouTube video is like Christian versus 25 atheists. And they were like, well, what are you then? He goes, well, I'm, and he kind of like stumbles around. He doesn't really know how to answer that question, but he says, I'm not a Christian. And they go, why were you even invited here? And he goes, well, I don't know what this is. I thought I was just debating 25 atheists. I didn't know it was, it's super awkward. And it's interesting to watch. If there was any question in your mind whether or not he identifies as a Christian, that should definitely clear it up. But yeah, so he's drawing people to faith, but I'm worried about the motives behind these people who are being drawn. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
And I'm worried that 20 to 30 years from now, that'll produce like religious pride more than it will.
The forms of religion
true
versus
repentance.
the actual substance of it.
Right.
How good are you at impersonating Jordan Peterson? That's really the big question.
Can we hear your Jordan Peterson not good at all. Yeah.
Why not? Come on.
No, I could not even. Can I
try? Okay.
Yeah, well, of course. I was hoping that you would try. And
well, how do you expect to go change the world if you can't even make your own dang bed? When we understand the post-COVID search for community and purpose, it is seen as understanding. That doesn't even make sense. I'm trying to sound intellectual because, everything he says is super. Yeah. Let me try again. Young men need some system of purpose. And if they don't have it, well, then what the heck do you do with your life? What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty close. I think I would like to go back through all of our episodes and find you doing Jordan Peterson impersonations, because I know that's got to be the third or fourth time.
I don't know. Since he's been popping up on the radar, we've talked about him a lot. I think though
Yeah.
that you bring up a very valid concern about this silent revival, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that an increase in church attendance, especially young men, means that they're all flocking to a form of Christianity like Jordan Peterson. I'm just concerned that there may be a lot of them that are, and is not necessarily leading to a true saving relationship with Christ. It may just be kind of religion as an aesthetic, like the vibe of religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Like another self-help
I guess I don't
tool.
like. I'm really bothered by the amount of religious aesthetics that has found its way into hip hop and pop music. Like, "Take Me to Church." You remember that song Hozier did a couple years ago? Or Sam Smith, who's openly gay and he dresses up like the devil at his concerts, but he uses like all this religious imagery and all this stuff, but it ultimately like is elevating kind of a surrender to your own self, but using kind of this cool symbol of a cross around your neck or stained glass or a gospel choir in the background. And I think there's something in the upcoming generation that craves that transcendent tradition, but ultimately that craving of a tradition kind of stops short at actual submission to Jesus. Does that make sense? Like that's a concern that I have.
Yeah. 100%.
Do you see that too?
It's a valid concern. And with this, yeah. With this revival, we ask the question: is it a true revival or a cultural reaction? That's something that only time will tell. Like I think we've said in the past revival episodes, it's like the difference between a revival and an experience is when the meetings are over, the band stops playing, and the engaging evangelist stops preaching. What does it look like 6 months, 3 years, 10 years later? And if there's zero change, then that was just an emotional experience that may have felt good in the moment. But if there's prolonged cultural change and a shift, then that was a true revival. And I think the key to this is like asking, will this lead to deeper discipleship, or just will it be like social, you put in the notes belonging, but I'm also looking like social, like
just
like what's the word?
I get
pacification,
almost
maybe?
like the pendulum swings from like how woke the world seemed to get post COVID to this kind of like is a leveling out of kind of returning to traditional values. But in a return to traditional values, it may not be that we're seeking Christ. It may just be that we're seeking community and purpose, and we're finding those within the church. Is that perhaps maybe what you're getting at? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, here in the U.S., we're seeing some really good trends. Probably not in the same dramatic form as we're seeing in the UK, but Gen Z Christians were forecast to be at 41%. Now that's up to 46%. So there's a 5% higher than forecast, which is really cool. Gen Z men outpace women in weekly church attendance. And I believe that's the only generation in our generations where that's a reality, which is fascinating. That statistically more Gen Z young men are in church every week than Gen Z young women. That's crazy. I wish my generation, the millennials, could get some of that fire, because I feel like the millennial males are pretty underwhelming. Barna, the Barna Group has done some of this research, and I found some of this from Barna. this idea of the commitment to Jesus among Gen Z males is up 22 points since 2021. And across the board, church attendance was declining for years and years and years, and now it's stabilizing across the board, which is really cool to see.
Interesting.
Because I think even on this podcast, we've unpacked how, more churches are shutting down and more churches are, struggling and declining and all that stuff. But nationwide, even if individual small struggling churches are shutting down, what's happening is they're consolidating. People are not stopping going to church. They're moving to healthier churches that perhaps are larger, that are healthier, which is a really interesting trend as well to explore, almost the consolidation of church. So a couple things, just kind of understanding the data. I think there is we've said this, post-COVID search for community and purpose. It's really interesting, and I didn't put it in the show notes, but there was a trend that said in the UK among Gen Z young men, those who would say that they have community or that they're lonely, like that was a significant amount of Gen Z young men. But when they asked Gen Z young men who were in church if they feel lonely or have community, that number was much, 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 much smaller. That if Gen Z young men are in a church, they have a sense of community. They have a friend. Which is really big because for years, one of the biggest concerning data trends has been the loneliness epidemic. And I think we've talked about that on the podcast a couple of times. How more and more people are just saying they don't have any friends. Which is crazy. So I don't even realize what that's like for young people now. I think that's a little surprising to me because young people are more connected digitally than ever before, but yet they're reporting that they don't have many friends.
Yeah, I mean, they're just surface level relationships, I guess. Just they're not deep, they're not meaningful.
Are kids hanging out in person less and less? Is that your experience having young? Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, not my kids per se. I think we're raising them to be more like '90s kids, but yeah, I would say definitely other kids for sure.
Why?
It's safe. It's I think parents encourage it. I think parents encourage staying in your house. And I mean, I think it was last summer, there was like these neighborhood kids that would come over to our house and then, they would play around our outside and stuff like that. But eventually more and more neighborhood kids came out. We've been living in this neighborhood for 7 years. More and more came out and we were just like, they were eventually kind of like lured out by other kids playing out in the neighborhood streets and stuff, and we were just like, where did all these kids come from? They've been living here this whole time and we had no idea. It's crazy. And it actually, yeah. And it got to the point where we were like, okay, there's a lot of kids here. We need to actually tell them to spread out, go somewhere else. But yeah, it was kind of cool to see them all actually tromping through the woods with sticks and stuff. And, but yeah, it wasn't nearly as bad, I guess, quote unquote, bad this summer. But last summer, there's something about all the kids came out of the woodwork and wanted to play outside all of a sudden.
But what's crazy is if you remove church from kind of the centerpiece of American life, what other place is kind of that community gathering place where anybody can show up? Doesn't matter who you are, you can show up on any given Sunday. You know what I mean? If you just say we're not going to have church, like where else are you going to meet people who are your neighbors and do life with them, And so I think we've kind of figured out, at least the younger generation is figuring out, like we need something to give us that community and that purpose, like a church family to do it.
Yeah, well, I think you could probably find that something similar, like in sporting events or like community parades and stuff. But the difference is that at a church, you're all expressing a communal and collective need for regeneration and salvation, and there's a degree of vulnerability there. I think people come into a church with this general expectation. Doesn't always happen, unfortunately, but this general expectation that everyone is one in Messiah, and there is no
Right.
claim to status or classes or anything like that. So I think that when played out correctly and carried out correctly, is a big draw to hungry and desperate people who are looking for community and
Yeah. No, absolutely.
purpose
And
in
it's
their
something
lives,
deeper
for
than
sure.
just, hey, let's go to a concert. Yeah. Faith now more than ever before is seen as countercultural. It's almost like rebellious to have faith, which is really funny. And so I think for young men, there's something attractive to that. Young women too, but just for young people, it's attractive to say, I'm doing something that may not be seen as normal, and it may be a life that's not what everyone around me is adopting, but it's the kind of life that I feel deep in my spirit is the one that leads to truth and the one that leads to life, and that's found in Christ. I think the reversal of gender norms is a really interesting one, that Christianity calls men to step up and be leaders, not to be dominating, not to be, we're not talking Andrew Tate type leadership, right? But to step into this idea that, dude, like, it is God who gave you that desire deep in your belly to want to be a protector and a provider and lead your family and have a wife and have children and build a legacy and a family tree. Like, that is ingrained in you as a man. And for culture just to look at young men and say, you're wrong and you're antiquated and you're backwards and you're misogynistic for having those desires is, I think, just denying an essential part of their humanity. And for the Christian faith to say, man, God made you the way that he made you, not to dominate or oppress women, but to step into a place of loving leadership in Christ as you lead alongside other men and kind of building something beautiful, and cultivating, creating something, I think is a very, very, very magnetic message to young men who are searching for that purpose.
Yeah, sure.
We kind of talked a little bit about some of this stuff. I'd love to just spend some time talking about where this is headed. As we looked at this, what do you think about this surprised you the most? Just talking through these trends and looking at sort of where this has been going and what the data is telling us. What is it that you found the most surprising about this?
Yeah, I would just say that it's even happening is surprising to me. You just see the trends have always been pointing towards people just completely secluding themselves. Secularism seemed to be growing. So yeah, that's really the biggest surprise I've had. And then that started with men. I think that's the other surprise, is that usually movements of faith tend to. Seems like women are more receptive to those kinds of movements and are usually the ones interceding for those kinds of movements. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah, I think I'm surprised by that the most, that in the UK especially, where secularism is becoming kind of what people thought would be the dominant worldview to win out. That's just not been the case,
Yeah.
And in the US as well.
Sure.
We've asked this question several times, but I'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts. Do you think this is a true revival or just kind of a cultural reaction? What do you think?
Yeah. Experience. Yeah, that's just like I said earlier. It's like just time will tell. Yeah, and it's hard to even measure that kind of stuff because how do you measure the results of a revival on culture other than even maybe like crime rates going down or just the overall people identifying as Christians maybe growing. I don't know how you would measure that, but I'm sure someone could do that. But that's 20 years from now, I think.
Yeah,
we'll know whether or not this was
inclined
a
to
true
think
revival.
it might be in some pockets genuine true revival, like a move of the Spirit of God to capture a generation, and then I think in some pockets it might be a cultural reaction. And I think we've seen that with any historical
Yeah.
revival, that there's always kind of, I mean, even in the First Great Awakening, we talked about that, like just some amazing fruit of that the Spirit of God was at work, but at the same time there was kind of an interest in religion being personalized because of some Enlightenment thought at work, right? So what was it? Was it Enlightenment philosophy that was leading people to make their experience of God more personalized, or was it a true move of the Holy Spirit? And I would say yes. In some pockets more one than the other, but I think probably yes, right? Do you think this will be something that churches respond to in a way that actually meets the need, or do you think churches will drop the ball with it? try to engage Gen Z men in a way that's goofy and silly and not what Gen Z men want?
I don't know. Yeah, every church is different, and yeah, I think like you said, I think trying to be appealing to Gen Z is exactly what they're not looking for. I think being real and being genuine in what you believe and in your convictions and how you walk those out as a congregation in church.
Do you think it's interesting
that's
so many
what they're looking
young
for.
men are coming back to the
So,
Roman Catholic
I don't
faith?
know. I do find that interesting. I think that's I've been predicting that for years. Is like we're seeing a lot of, especially former evangelical men, who are hungry for something
Right.
something rooted in ancient tradition, they're going back to Roman Catholicism or Eastern Orthodox traditions, because they feel like that's something
But
original.
here's what I
that's
think
something
is really
ancient.
interesting. It's not just the Roman Catholics, it's the Pentecostals that are also growing. And here's my theory. I think what they both have in common is an embrace of the supernatural. Because in a Roman Catholic Mass, there's the belief that there's a miracle that happens anytime you take the Eucharist. Right? So you are engaging with the supernatural. You're coming to that Mass expectant. You're going to receive in yourself the very person of Jesus Christ through the Eucharist, right? And in a Pentecostal church, you come in with the expectation you're going to engage the person of the Holy Spirit in a meaningful way as you go to that worship service, right? So I think that even though on the surface the form of those two church traditions look almost diametrically opposed, as you dig deeper into what is the appeal, it is that you're going not to a concert, you're going not to be entertained, you're going with the expectation that you're going to encounter God. So I think, if you're a church that isn't Pentecostal or isn't Roman Catholic, one way you can respond is, what is the desire for this generation? The desire for this generation is not to be entertained. Good Lord, they have more entertainment they can shake a stick at. What they want is they want something transcendent. They want to encounter the truth of God in a real way that's authentic. And that's not phony or showy or manipulative. They just want to encounter something real, something true, something authentic. And I think that's why they're probably gravitating towards those. And I hope that we as the church respond to that. We don't just give them more silliness and goofiness and more commercialism. Was that the baby boomers, you think, that really responded with the whole attractional church model? Or was that our generation? Who should we blame it on? Or Gen X? I don't know.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'd say it's a Gen X thing. Yeah.
Not to say that
put it on
an
them.
attractional model is always awful. I mean, what do you want your church to be, unattractional? But I think that there is a prevailing mindset for years that what people want is just a Mick church and a Mick sermon, and you come in and you get your 3 songs and hear your little motivational TED talk for Jesus. It's only 25 minutes and doesn't actually open the Bible, and then get out of there as quickly as possible. And I think that Gen Z is just saying we want more than that. We want something that's deeper than that. So, kind of last question, Gabe, as we wrap up. What are you seeing in your own church related to the younger generation? And what do we need to engage this upcoming generation? What do you and I need to do as pastors to engage them?
Yeah, I'm seeing a real hunger for really understanding the tenets of their faith and why they should embrace them. And I think it's a really good hunger to have. But like I sat across a table from a young man Saturday night who was raised Mormon, but is seeking all, like, I guess I'm trying to say in a tactful way, but he's seeking truth. Let's leave it at that. And sitting across the table, and this kid is 16 years old, if I'm not mistaken, and he's asking questions that I would say are pretty abnormal of a 16-year-old of our generation. Like you and I were looking for the next release of the next Tooth and Nail album, but like this kid's asking like, how did the Bible get to us the way it got to us? And then how can I trust it? Or, he's asking some really, really good questions, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. I see a lot of that. I think just a deep longing for understanding of their faith.
Yeah, same. I see a discontentment with stock, easy answers. Because I think in the age of AI, you have any question, you can plug it in your ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can spit out a stock, easy answer that's derivative and taken from whatever, right?
Right.
I think Gen Z is going, I don't need more information. I need like a transformative experience of truth, of capital T truth, right? I don't need more programs. I don't need more entertainment. I'm marketed to more than any other generation on planet Earth that has ever existed. I need like a face-to-face relationship with someone who can put the phone down and look at me in the eyes and tell me something true and give me something real. And so I think in our church, I see a lot of the younger generation that has a hunger to have conversations with adults that I did not see in any other generation. Like I have a couple of high schoolers at our church that after service, sometimes they'll come up front and they'll sit down on the front row with me and we'll talk and they'll ask me questions, deep questions like the one that you said this young man's asking you. And I'll get emails from some of them asking me some of the questions. What do you think about this? Or, is there a book I could read about this? And I've made this comment to some folks on our team. I was like, I would never at 16 think of doing that with my pastor. Not that my pastor was not somebody who was engaging, but like I don't think I was comfortable enough to do that, And the fact that they are not uncomfortable doing that, they're actually like hungering for that. They're hungering for an adult figure that isn't going to just give them stock, easy answers, that is okay saying, hey, you know what? I don't think I know the answer to that, but let's explore this together. Why don't we get a book and we'll read it together, and then we'll meet up next Sunday, and after service we can sit and talk about, hey, what'd you learn? What'd you think? What questions do you still have?
Yeah. Yeah, we eat lunch, like a potluck lunch, after all of our services, and this past weekend we had 3, I guess they're Gen Zers, visit two young men and a young lady. And they stuck around to eat lunch and made a plate and sat down at the table. And there was an empty spot at the table with them. I sat down and was eating lunch with them and talking to them and getting to know them a little bit better. And they didn't really want to engage in a lot of small talk. They wanted to talk about, like they asked a question about like, what do you think is the future of Western Christianity, or who do you think are some of the bigger influences on Christianity in the West? And they asked like, how do you know when you're hearing from God and direction in your life and stuff like that? I'm just like blown away that these kids are asking this super deep stuff. But yeah, it's interesting that just this past weekend I've had 4 experiences like that with Gen Zers who are hungry for authenticity. Like you said, actually face to face with a human being. I think Gen Z though we had our doubts, I think they're going to be. We're going to see some of the biggest like movers and shakers coming out of that generation because of their hunger for authenticity and their unacceptance of falsehood. Not all of them, but I think we're going to see some pretty important figures.
I'll say this:
who are going to do
I
some mighty things.
think Gen Z has a lot more powerful BS meter than other generations. Yeah, they can sniff it out quicker than almost anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're so disillusioned and disenfranchised with the unrestrained hedonism and the wokeness of our generation. They just sniff that out and they just go, hey, something about this just seems, it doesn't even add up. Like there's got to be something more than this, you know? Yeah. Well, good stuff. Well, Gabe, I think in order to meet the Gen Z generation where they're at, I'm going to cut my hair in a Gen Z haircut. So I'm going to grow out the top and get a perm, fluff it down, and then mullet it up.
Mm-hmm. Did
I
mullet?
Get this really weird little pencil mustache thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to wear just a chain that's super skinny, an oversized white shirt that says Bass Pro Shop right here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to wear gym shorts, but really short gym shorts. Yeah. Tube socks, Crocs.
With some tube socks and Crocs.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. And I'm going to get up and I'm going to preach in this outfit. And I'm going to just win the generation for Christ.
I think those BS meters would go off like crazy when they saw that. Yeah. Can we do an episode on weird pastor?
I think we should.
Weird pastor fashion. Can we do? Oh man, that would be epic. Just to like roast pastors.
Hey, and I'll say this too. I didn't mean for that to launch us onto a deeper topic. I don't think Gen Z really cares what the heck their pastor's wearing. I don't think they care if their pastor preaches in khakis or if their pastor preaches in jeans. I really don't think they care. They want to know what that person is saying is true, genuine, and authentic. They don't care if he's up there with his little gym shorts and his Crocs and socks with his curly mullet and chain and Bass Pro Shop shirt, even though he's never fished a day in his life. They don't care about that. So.
Yeah. Would they feel like you're misappropriating their style?
Say the slang. Because I don't think I've ever heard a kid talk like that, unless it's a secret language they only talk with each other with. But yeah, and Riz and No Cap and all that stuff.
You talking about like the whole skibbity?
I've never heard kids talk like that. Maybe they just talk like that to each other, not to us old people. Is it?
I heard that some of the Gen Zers told me that's more of a Gen Alpha thing. Anyways,
that's cool. All right, Skibbity. Did I use that right? Okay, cool. Okay, yeah. It's just like a title. You give somebody like, hey, that's my friend Skibbity. Yeah. Okay, I don't understand.
Yeah, you respond with toilet for it. Ohio
so
toilet.
You get teenage sons. I don't. So.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, it's been a good lunch break hanging out with you, man.
Mm-hmm.
Don't work too hard today.
Yeah,
likewise. Yeah.
I won't.
All right. Well, fam, No Cap. If this episode was a Riz, you could send us your skibbity bibbity email to beardsandbiblepodcast@gmail.com. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.